The flickering lights of Delta 9 space station cast long shadows across Jack Stone's repair shop. Grease covered his hands as he finished working on the merchant's ship engine. The blue-skinned alien merchant stood nearby, wringing his hands and looking nervous. Jack had seen many worried customers before, but something felt different this time. "Your ship is fixed now," Jack said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "That'll be 500 credits." He watched the merchant's face change from relief to fear. The merchant's voice shook. I don't have the credits." Before Jack could speak, the alien quickly added, "But I have something much more valuable to offer." Jack sighed. He had heard this kind of talk before. Usually, it meant worthless items or stolen goods. "Look, I need to pay for parts and—" "Please, wait." The merchant hurried to his ship and returned leading someone by the hand. A young woman with pale silver skin stepped into the light. Her simple gray clothes couldn't hide her natural grace. Her eyes, deep purple like distant stars, met Jack's with quiet strength. "This is Star," the merchant said. "She's worth 10 times your fee. I offer her as payment." Jack felt his stomach turn. In his 5 years working on the frontier, he had managed to avoid dealing with the slave trade. "I don't deal in people," he said firmly. The merchant stepped closer, speaking quietly. "You are known to be a good man, Mr. Stone. She needs someone like you." Something in the merchant's voice made Jack look closer at the situation. Star stood perfectly still, her head held high despite her supposed status. Her hands were smooth, not those of someone used to hard work. When she spoke, her voice carried an odd mix of authority and humility. "I would be honored to serve in your household." Jack studied them both. The merchant didn't act like a typical slave trader, and Star didn't behave like any slave he'd ever seen. Something strange was happening here, but his instincts told him that refusing might put Star in real danger. "Fine," Jack said at last. "But I don't believe in slavery. Once you're mine, I'm setting you free." A flash of something, relief. Worry? Crossed Star's face. "As you wish, master." The merchant quickly handed over documents and rushed away, leaving Jack alone with his unusual new companion. He turned to Star, ready to tear up the ownership papers, but she spoke first. "Please," she said softly, "keep them for now. They provide protection." Jack frowned but tucked the papers into his pocket. "You can sleep in the spare room upstairs. Are you hungry?" Star nodded, then waited. When Jack started walking toward the kitchen, she remained still. "You should go first," she said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "We don't do that here. Everyone's equal in my shop." Star hesitated, then walked beside him. In the kitchen, she waited again until Jack took his first bite. Her movements were precise, almost ritual-like. She held her cup as if it were made of fine crystal instead of cheap metal. Later that night, Jack lay awake thinking about his strange new guest. She knew too much about station operations, spoke too well, and carried herself too properly. When a military ship had passed by the station's main window, she had named its class and capabilities without even seeming to think about it. None of it added up, but as Jack drifted off to sleep, he remembered something his father used to say. Sometimes the best way to find the truth was to simply give it time to reveal itself. Tomorrow would be soon enough to start unraveling the mystery of Star. In her room, Star sat by the window, watching the stars. Her fingers traced patterns in the air, old royal gestures she shouldn't know. A tear rolled down her cheek, quickly wiped away. "Thank you, old friend," she whispered to the departed merchant. "You found him, just as you promised." Then she straightened her shoulders, composed her face, and prepared to play her role for another day. 2 weeks passed on Delta 9 station, and Jack found himself more puzzled by Star with each passing day. She learned his repair business faster than anyone he'd ever met. While cleaning the shop one morning, she stopped to correct his calculations for a tricky engine repair. "The power flow would be uneven," she said, pointing at his work tablet. "If you adjust the numbers here and here, The engine will run 10% more efficiently. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, making complex adjustments that would have taken Jack hours to figure out. He stared at her work. "Where did you learn advanced ship engineering?" Star froze for a moment, then smiled softly. "One picks up many things, working on different ships." She turned away quickly and began organizing tools. Later that day, a group of elegant alien merchants visited the shop. Jack watched as they spoke to Star about a broken navigation system. He expected to step in and help, but there was no need. She explained the problem and solution with perfect technical detail, even drawing up the repair plans herself. But it was what happened when she thought no one was looking that really caught Jack's attention. One of the merchants had dropped something, and Star moved to pick it up. The alien's eyes went wide with recognition, and he started to bow before catching himself. Star had given him the tiniest shake of her head, and the merchant quickly walked away. "Making friends with the customers?" Jack asked casually. "They are kind people," Star replied, but her hands trembled slightly as she put away the tools. The mysteries kept piling up. One evening, Jack found Star in the shop's small office, looking at star charts. Her fingers traced paths between systems with practiced ease, and she was muttering calculations under her breath, complex jump coordinates that most navigators needed computers to work out. "Just curiosity," she said when she noticed him watching. But Jack saw how she'd marked specific routes, all leading to and from a particular sector of space, the direction of the Celestial Empire. The next day, a customer's ship needed emergency repairs. Its navigation computer was showing strange errors. Star took one look at the system and spoke without thinking. "Ah, a common problem with the Royal-class ships of the Third Fleet." She caught herself and added quickly, "Or so I've heard from traders." Jack pretended not to notice how she'd slipped into a formal tone, the kind used in high courts and official broadcasts. He was starting to piece things together, but he kept his thoughts to himself. More strange things happened that week. A group of rough-looking aliens came to the shop, asking questions about recent arrivals. Star had hidden in the back room, but Jack saw how she held herself, not in fear, but in controlled alertness, like a soldier assessing a threat. That same evening, she was helping him with paperwork when a news broadcast caught their attention. It showed scenes from a royal ceremony in the Celestial Empire. Star's hand moved automatically in a perfect court gesture of respect, though she quickly turned the movement into a reach for a tool. "You know," Jack said carefully, "for someone who claims to be a simple slave, you know an awful lot about royal customs." "One hears things," she said softly, but her voice had changed, taking on that strange formal tone again. I have worked in many places." Jack noticed how she'd almost used the royal we, a habit only those born to rule carried. He remembered stories about the missing princess of the Celestial Empire, about political troubles brewing in that sector of space. That night, as he closed up the shop, Jack found a piece of paper Star had been writing on. The script was perfect Royal Celestial, the kind only taught in the highest courts. He carefully put it back where he'd found it, but his mind was racing. Star wasn't just hiding something, she was hiding everything. And Jack had a feeling that very soon he would have to choose between keeping her secret and keeping his simple life, because whatever Star was running from, it was starting to catch up with them. Earlier that day, he'd spotted 3 different bounty hunter ships docking at the station. Something big was coming, and they were right in the middle of it. The bounty hunters arrived during the night shift of Delta 9 station. 3 ships, each marked with different clan symbols, but all carrying the same kind of dangerous crew. Jack watched from his shop's doorway as they walked through the main corridor, their heavy boots making the metal floor shake. Star was in the back room, fixing a broken power converter. When she heard the boots, her hands stopped moving. She didn't turn around, but Jack saw how still she became, like a deer sensing danger. "Just some hunters passing through," Jack said, trying to sound casual. "Probably chasing some criminal." "Yes," Star whispered. A criminal. Her voice carried a strange mix of bitterness and fear. The next morning, a large alien with battle scars across his face walked into the shop. His armor was expensive, and his weapons looked very illegal for station rules. He carried a data pad with a picture on it. "Looking for someone," the hunter said, showing Jack the pad. "Blue-haired female, royal bearing. Seen anyone like that?" The picture was grainy, taken from far away. It showed someone in fine clothes running through a spaceport. Jack could see why they might think it was Star, but the image was too unclear to be sure. "Haven't seen anyone like that," Jack said, wiping his hands on his work cloth. "Lots of blue-haired aliens pass through here, though. Hard to keep track." The hunter stared at him for a long moment. 10,000 credits for good information. Think about it. After the hunter left, Jack found Star in the storage room, her hand shaking as she organized parts. "They're not here for you, are they?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Before she could respond, alarms rang through the station. Security announced that someone had broken into the station's database. Jack rushed to check his shop's computer system. All his files were mixed up, and someone had tried to access his customer records. "They're looking for my arrival records," Star said quietly. "They want to trace my path." That evening, Jack closed the shop early. As he was locking up, he noticed more hunters in the corridor. They were asking questions at every shop, showing more pictures. Some of the pictures looked older, showing someone who could definitely be Star, but wearing clothes that cost more than Jack's whole shop. He walked back inside to find the shop's back room had been searched. Tools were scattered everywhere. Star stood in the middle of the mess, holding something that had fallen from a high shelf, a small box covered in strange writing. "I'm sorry," she said. "They must have broken in while we were working out front. They're getting desperate." She touched the box gently. "This writing, it's a royal seal." Jack picked up a piece of paper that had fallen near his feet. The writing on it was like nothing he'd seen before, all curves and dots that seemed to shine slightly in the light. "Royal Celestial Script," Star said, not bothering to hide it anymore. "A message from someone who wants to help me." She took a deep breath. "Jack, I..." Suddenly, the station's lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in dim red light. Through the shop's window, they could see people running in the corridor. Multiple unauthorized ships docking, the station's computer announced. "Security protocols engage." Star's face went pale. "They found me. Different groups, all trying to either capture or kill me." She looked at Jack with desperate eyes. "I never meant to bring this trouble to you." Jack could hear heavy boots approaching from both directions in the corridor. They were trapped in the shop, and he could see shadows moving outside his door. Star stood straighter, her whole manner changing. Gone was the humble shop helper. In her place stood someone used to giving commands. "Jack," she said, her voice carrying new authority, "I'm not who I've been pretending to be. And right now, we have about 2 minutes before that door breaks down, and everything changes forever. Whatever you decide to do next, know that I am deeply sorry for lying to you, but I am not sorry for trusting you." The pounding on the door began, and Jack Stone realized he was about to make the biggest decision of his life. Jack moved quickly, pulling Star behind a heavy workbench as the pounding on the door grew louder. His mind raced through their options. The back exit was probably watched, the air vents were too small, and the storage room had no other way out. "If we're going to die here," he said, "I'd at least like to know who I'm dying with." Star's eyes met his in the red emergency lighting. She straightened her back, and suddenly she looked different, regal, powerful, born to command. "I am Princess Aurora of the Celestial Empire, first of her name, heir to the Starborn throne." She spoke quietly, but with absolute authority. "And I ran away from my own wedding." The door shuddered under another heavy blow. Jack stared at her, pieces clicking into place. Her knowledge of ships, her perfect manners, the way other aliens sometimes recognized her. "That merchant who brought you here. My most loyal guard," she said. He helped me escape. The wedding was a trap, you see. They wanted to force me to marry the son of the Dark Star Coalition's leader. It would have given them legal power over our empire. Her hands clenched into fists. A marriage that would start a war, killing millions. Another crash at the door. Metal groaned. So you became a slave? Jack asked in disbelief. A princess chose to be a slave. Who would look for a runaway princess among slaves? A bitter smile crossed her face. My father taught me that a true ruler must understand all their people, even the lowest. I didn't expect to learn quite so directly. She touched his arm. The merchant chose you carefully, Jack. Your reputation for kindness, for fairness. He knew you would treat even a slave with respect. The door burst open. Shadows filled the entrance. Come out, Your Highness, a rough voice called. The coalition pays better than the empire. Make this easy. Star. No, Princess Aurora reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with soft blue light. This is a royal beacon, she whispered. If I activate it, my father's ships will come, but they're 3 days away at best. We'd have to survive that long. Jack looked at the princess he'd known as a slave, remembering how well she'd worked in his shop, how kindly she treated everyone. Then he looked at the shadows moving into his shop, weapons ready. Your Highness, he said, with all respect, shut up and let me save us. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back of the shop. The hunters shouted and fired their weapons, but Jack knew his shop better than anyone. He kicked open a hidden panel in the floor, his emergency escape route. Maintenance tunnels, he explained as they dropped down into the darkness. They run all through the station, been mapping them for years. They ran through the narrow passages, the sounds of pursuit growing distant. Aurora moved with surprising speed and silence for royalty. When they stopped to catch their breath, she spoke again. There's more you need to know, she said. The coalition has spies in my father's court. The wedding was part of a larger plot. They've been planning this for years, weakening our borders, placing their people in key positions. And running away was your only option. It was my best option. As a missing princess, I can move freely, gather evidence, find our true allies. She touched the royal beacon in her pocket. But I didn't expect to find someone like you, Jack. Someone who treated a slave like a person, who taught me how normal people truly live. Jack peeked around a corner, checking for followers. Normal people don't usually hide runaway princesses. No, she agreed, a real smile crossing her face. But normal people also don't build secret escape tunnels in their shops. I think perhaps you were meant to be part of this story. Footsteps echoed in the distance. They both tensed, ready to run again. Jack, Aurora said quickly, I'm giving you a choice. Help me reach safety, and I'll make sure you're rewarded. Or point me toward the docks, and I'll go alone. You've already done more than I had any right to ask. Jack Stone looked at the princess he'd known as Star, thinking about choices and consequences. In the distance, hunters searched for them. And somewhere far away, an empire waited to see what would happen next. Jack's answer came in actions rather than words. He grabbed Aurora's hand and pulled her down the left tunnel. My ship's in the lower docks, he whispered. If we can reach it without being seen, we might have a chance. They moved through the dark maintenance tunnels, their footsteps echoing softly against metal walls. Jack led them through turns and crossways he'd mapped over years of secret explorations. Above them, they could hear the heavy boots of hunters searching. Wait, Aurora whispered, pulling him to a stop. Listen. In the distance, they heard voices giving orders, some in common language, others in the flowing speech of the Celestial Empire. Those are royal guards, she said. They must have traced the merchant's path here. Friends of yours? No. Her face hardened. The ones searching for me are loyal to my uncle. He arranged the marriage. The true royal guards, the ones loyal to my father, are too far away. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Jack peered around each corner, then pulled back quickly. 6 hunters at the end of that passage. They're blocking the way to the docks. Aurora reached into her pocket and pulled out a small tool she'd taken from the shop. With quick movements, she opened a panel in the wall, revealing tangles of wires. "Watch for anyone coming," she said, her fingers moving with surprising skill among the circuits. Suddenly, alarms blared through the station. Fire warnings flashed in 3 different sections, far from where they were. Security teams and hunters rushed toward the false alerts, leaving their path clearer. "Nice trick," Jack said, impressed. "A princess should understand her empire's systems," Aurora replied with a small smile. "Even the parts they don't teach in royal schools." They reached the lower docks without being spotted. Jack's ship sat in its usual spot, not the prettiest vessel, but fast and reliable. As they got closer, Aurora stopped suddenly. "There," she pointed to shadows moving near the ship. "They knew we'd try for it." Jack pulled her behind a stack of cargo containers. "There's something you should know," he said. "I've made some improvements to my ship, things that aren't exactly legal, but might save our lives." "You mean like the hidden compartments under the floor panels?" Aurora asked. When Jack stared at her, she shrugged. "I noticed them while cleaning. The measurements of the inside didn't match the outside." A blast hit the container near their heads. They'd been spotted. Jack fired back with his repair tool, now set to a dangerous energy level that definitely voided its warranty. Aurora picked up a piece of pipe and showed she knew how to use it, taking down a hunter who got too close. They fought their way to the ship, moving like they'd practiced it 100 times. Jack got the door open while Aurora covered him, showing fighting skills no normal princess should have. "Royal combat training," she explained between breaths. "Father insisted. Said a ruler should never depend entirely on guards." Inside the ship, Jack jumped into the pilot's seat while Aurora took the co-pilot position without being asked. Her fingers flew over the controls, bringing systems online faster than Jack had ever seen. "They're powering up weapons on those ships," she said, reading the scanner. "But their targeting systems are standard coalition models. Predictable." The ship lifted off as shots hit its shields. Jack flew straight at the station's outer wall, making their pursuers think they were trapped. At the last second, Aurora hit a series of controls, and the ship slipped through a maintenance exit that didn't appear on official maps. As they accelerated away from the station, more ships appeared on their scanners. Aurora studied the readings, her face serious. 3 coalition hunters behind us. 2 Royal Guard ships coming from above. And she paused, something big moving at the edge of scanner range. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they can all catch us." Jack smiled as he pushed his ship faster. 10 minutes is a long time for people who are good at improvising. He looked at the princess who had pretended to be a slave, who had fought beside him without hesitation. "Got any more royal tricks up your sleeve?" Aurora's eyes lit up with a dangerous gleam. "You know, there are some things they definitely don't teach in royal school. How do you feel about flying through an asteroid field?" After 3 days of dodging hunters through the asteroid field, Jack's ship limped into a small mining colony on the edge of known space. The colony hung in the shadow of a dead moon, its lights dimmed to avoid attention. As they docked, Aurora pointed to markings on the walls that Jack had thought were just scratches. "Royal resistance codes," she explained. "This is a safe place. My father's loyal supporters maintain it, hidden from my uncle's spies." The docking bay door opened to reveal a group of rough-looking miners. They started to approach with weapons ready, but stopped when Aurora made a simple gesture with her hand. The miners dropped to one knee immediately. "Your Highness," their leader said, "we had word you might come." Inside the colony, Jack saw how carefully the resistance had built their hideout. What looked like simple mining equipment from the outside contained powerful weapons. Regular workers turned out to be highly trained soldiers and spies. But what surprised him most was how they looked at Aurora. Not with blind worship, but with genuine respect. "These are my people," Aurora said as they walked through the colony. "Not just the nobles and soldiers, but the miners, engineers, and common workers. They know what the coalition would do to our empire. They gathered in a hidden command center, where Aurora's supporters shared their intelligence. Jack watched as she listened to everyone, from high-ranking officers to maintenance workers, giving each person's words the same attention. "The coalition has bought many of your uncle's advisors," a spy reported. "They promise him power, but plan to use him as a puppet. The forced marriage would have given them legal claim to the throne." "And my father?" Aurora asked quietly. "Alive, but watched closely. He suspects something is wrong, but can't trust anyone close to him." Aurora turned to a large star map. "Show me the coalition's fleet movements." As the others gathered around the map, Jack noticed something odd about the supply routes. "Wait," he said, forgetting his place. "Those patterns, they're just like the power fluctuations I used to see in damaged engines. They're building up to something big." Instead of being angry at his interruption, Aurora smiled. "This is why we need different perspectives," she said to her commanders. "Jack sees patterns we might miss." She pointed to the map. "He's right. The coalition is gathering forces here, and here. They're planning to strike as soon as they have their legal claim to the throne." A noble-looking officer spoke up. "Your Highness, with respect, we should move now. Attack while we can." "No," Aurora said firmly. "That's what they expect. A royal response, all pride and power." She smiled. "Instead, we'll do something they'd never expect from royalty. We'll ask the common people for help." Over the next few days, Jack watched as Aurora put her plan into action. She recorded messages to be broadcast across the empire, but not from a palace or command center. Instead, she spoke from the mining colony's work areas, dressed in simple clothes, her hands dirty from helping with repairs. "My people," she said in each message, "I have lived among you as one of you. I have worked in your shops, eaten at your tables, seen your daily struggles. The coalition would turn our empire into their puppet state. They think we are divided, nobles against workers, rich against poor. But I have seen our true strength. It lies not in royal decrees or noble titles, but in how we stand together." The response came faster than anyone expected. Ships started arriving at the colony. Merchant vessels, repair crews, mining operations. Regular people bringing what help they could offer. Jack watched them meet Aurora, saw their surprise when they realized their princess understood their work and their lives. "You're building more than a resistance," he said to her one evening. "You're changing how your empire sees itself." Aurora looked at the latest group of arrivals. Mechanics, traders, and miners, all preparing to fight for their princess who had worked beside them. "I learned it from you, Jack," she said softly. "In your shop, rank didn't matter. Only how you treated people, how hard you worked, how well you understood what needed fixing." She turned to him with determination in her eyes. "And right now, our empire needs a lot of fixing." The royal palace of the Celestial Empire glittered like a jewel among the stars. Jack stood beside Aurora on the bridge of a merchant ship, both of them dressed as simple cargo handlers. Around them, a fleet of ordinary vessels, repair ships, mining craft, trading boats, moved into position, each carrying people loyal to their princess. "Ready?" Jack asked, adjusting his worn work clothes. Aurora nodded, looking strange but comfortable in a mechanic's outfit. "The coalition expects a royal attack. Instead, they'll face the real empire, its working people." Their ship docked at a maintenance bay, ignored by the grand military vessels watching the main ports. As they walked through the palace corridors, Aurora led with the perfect posture of a noble servant, while Jack followed with tools rattling in his belt. Guards glanced at them and looked away, trained to ignore common workers. They reached the Grand Council chamber just as Aurora's uncle was making his announcement. "The princess remains missing," he declared to the gathered nobles and coalition representatives. "For the safety of our empire, we must proceed with the alliance. The coalition's heir will assume the throne through marriage to the royal line." "That would be difficult," Aurora said clearly, stepping out of the shadows. since I declined the marriage." The room erupted in chaos. Guards moved to seize her, but stopped when hundreds of workers emerged from service doors and maintenance halls. Mechanics held tools like weapons, miners stood with picks ready, and ship crews blocked the exits. Among them were nobles and officers who had secretly supported Aurora, now standing openly with the common people. "What is this?" Aurora's uncle demanded. "This is what you forgot about our empire," Aurora said, walking forward. "Its strength isn't in royal blood or ancient laws. It's in its people." She gestured to Jack. "This man took in a slave and treated her with respect. He taught me that true leadership isn't about giving orders. It's about understanding what needs to be fixed and working to fix it." The coalition's representatives reached for weapons, but found themselves surrounded by determined faces. Jack stepped forward, holding up a data chip. "We have proof of your plot," he said. "Messages, payment records, battle plans. Your spies were careful, but they never noticed a simple mechanic checking the communication systems." Aurora's father, the Emperor, stood from his throne. He looked at his daughter, dressed as a worker but standing with more royal dignity than any noble in the room. "You chose to live as a slave," he said softly. "Why?" "To understand our people," Aurora answered. "To learn what our empire truly needs." She smiled at Jack. "And to find out who would treat even a slave with kindness." What happened next became legend in the Celestial Empire. The coalition representatives were arrested. Aurora's uncle and his conspirators faced justice. But what people remembered most was how Aurora refused to change back into royal clothes for the ceremony. "I am your princess," she declared to the watching crowds. "But I have also been your fellow worker. I have repaired your ships, shared your meals, and learned your struggles. And I swear that from this day forward, our empire will value all its people, from the highest noble to the humblest worker." The changes came quickly after that. Aurora appointed Jack as her chief advisor, shocking traditionalists but delighting common people who had always dreamed of having a voice in the empire. Together, they began dismantling the old slavery laws, creating new protections for workers, and building schools that taught both royal philosophy and practical skills. Late one evening, Jack found Aurora in the palace repair shop she had insisted on building. She was teaching young nobles how to fix engine parts, her hands dirty with grease despite her royal robes. "Having fun?" he asked, smiling at how naturally she moved between her two worlds. "The best way to lead is to understand all parts of what you're trying to fix," she said, using his own words from long ago. She looked at him warmly. "Thank you, Jack, for seeing me as a person when I was a slave, and for seeing me as a person when you learned I was a princess." Jack picked up a tool and joined her at the workbench. Beyond the palace windows, ships of all kinds flew past, royal vessels and cargo haulers sharing the same space, just as nobles and workers now shared the empire's future. "You know," he said, "for a princess who became a slave who became a better princess, you turned out pretty good at fixing things." Aurora laughed, the sound echoing through her new empire. An empire where a former slave owner and a former slave now worked side by side to build something better than either of them had imagined possible.